Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Duck Zone. We are in the first week of the college football playoff. 12 teams now this year. Very excited, and we are in the first round. As you guys know at this point, the higher seed gets the home field for this round. It's going to create for some fun matchups, some great viewing on Friday and Saturday. James, welcome back on in. Thank you so much for being here. And I know you got some
Yep,
notes and things that
glad to
you
be
want to
here.
talk about. We had the Heisman last week and a few other things happening. So I'll give you the floor to get this thing started, and then we'll jump right into the first round of the playoff.
Yeah, just a couple things, nothing too crazy. I had mentioned on the last pod we would talk about Bill Belichick, but I think we kind of covered that enough in the last pod, kind of tying it to the NFL and college simultaneously. So anyone who didn't watch the last one, or if you didn't know, Bill Belichick is the coach of UNC. We'll see how that goes, especially with the portal being open now. People have already started jumping around. He actually secured a quarterback, a recruit, like a four-star kid. So, yep, the Bill Belichick news will be interesting to follow as we continue on. We had the Army Navy game. Navy crushed Army. I actually didn't watch it, but from the score and the box score, it looked like Navy, pretty handedly took down Army. Normally, that's a pretty fun game, and honestly, this is probably the year that would have been fun to watch because both Navy and Army, most pretty much all year, were really good. Army even having a chance, to potentially go to the playoff. I don't think they deserved it, and rightfully so. But yeah, it looked like it. If you're a Navy fan, great game for you guys. So, and then the last thing you had mentioned, the Heisman, Travis Hunter getting the award. Uh, Much to the chagrin, I think, of a lot of people, I noticed that Ashton Genty won the fan vote, which I thought was interesting. I guess to give my opinion on the situation, again, not that I'm a college football expert by any means, but if I had a vote, I think I would have given it to Genty too. I just feel like just what he means to that Boise State team is a little more than Travis Hunter. And I know Hunter plays both ways, and he's a phenomenal athlete. And honestly, he does. It's not that Hunter doesn't deserve it. He's great as a cornerback and he's great as a wide receiver. I don't remember him really having a Heisman moment all year, whereas Ashton Genty seemed to have Heisman moments every game. He also sat out a total of 8 quarters for the year because Boise State was winning by so much, so his numbers could have even been more inflated. And he was towing the line with most yards. Was it most yards from scrimmage or rushing yards? I can't remember, but he was going. He was pretty much honing in on Barry Sanders' record, and it was numbers we haven't seen from a running back in a long time. So I don't want to say Genty got screwed. Travis Hunter deserved it, but I kind of lean towards Genty. I don't know. What do you think about? How do you think the Heisman people got it right?
Yeah, I mean, it was what the closest vote in about 15 years. So it was close. I think Genty, for me, I feel like he deserved it more than Hunter. Hunter had a great year, don't get me wrong. I feel like we're living in this era, though, with Shohei Ohtani, this fascination of the two-way player. You know, writers and the media are just kind of taking this storyline of like, whoa, this is a phenomenal athlete and everything like that. Don't get me wrong, Hunter's stats were very, very good, but the thing that really pushed it over the edge for me is the fact that if you would take Genty off the Boise State team, there's no way they're in the playoffs. Travis Hunter actually had a pretty good Colorado team around him, and they had an opportunity to make the playoffs. And they lost 3 games, and I know you can make the argument. Yes, Boise State in the Mountain West is less competitive than Colorado in the Big 12, but still, I just you know I would have rather see Genty win it, but Travis Hunter, very good player. He's gonna be a great player at the next level. One of the other things that doesn't get put in the stat book that does have some truth to it though as well is teams just stopped throwing towards Travis Hunter's side on the defensive side of the ball, and that's a stat that does get missed. They just stopped throwing to him, and it's kind of like that Revis thing from many years ago, and on the Asamoah, I forgot his name, the guy who used to play for the Raiders. Remember, it was like he never had great stats, but it was like,
Yeah, you're right. Namdi Asamoah.
yeah, it was like 1 year in there where it was something stupid like he had like one interception, but if you looked at his actual stats, he only got thrown to like 18 times all year. It's like he literally took away a whole receiver. Travis Hunter did that a little bit, and that does get missed from the stats a little bit. As he was a game changer to the one side. Both very good players. I personally, if I would have voted, I would have gone Gentry though, and I understand why the people would have voted that way. Um, but yeah, that's my feeling on it. So.
Yeah, that's really all I had. Let's move on to the games.
Cool. Let's move on to the games. First round matchups. It's going to be very exciting to watch. 4 games on the slate. As I said, the higher seed is going to be playing at home. And to start it off on Friday night, we got an Indiana matchup. University of Indiana going to Notre Dame. It's going to be a chilly, chilly night in South Bend, but both these teams were used to it. 27 degrees at kickoff. But who do you got in this Indiana matchup?
I have Notre Dame winning this. This is an interesting game for me. I feel like a lot of Indiana fans, especially because Indiana football hasn't been really anything ever. A lot of Indiana fans actually are Notre Dame fans as well, or there's a lot of crossover just with both colleges being in the state of Indiana. It's not like a hated rivalry by any means. So, in a matchup, obviously we don't see that often. So, it'll be pretty fun for the state of Indiana to have that game, especially being a playoff game in South Bend. I like Notre Dame. I would have liked Indiana a little more had they beaten Ohio State or at least shown me something. But I know we've talked about this previously. I don't want to say Indiana was what's the word I'm looking for? I guess just not up to snuff. But they really hadn't played anyone. They finally play a big opponent in Ohio State, and they just get absolutely obliterated. They look like they don't even know how to run an offense, and they had a pretty potent offense all year. So my big key takeaway for this game is the IU offense versus the Notre Dame defense. IU does have a good offense, and I know against Ohio State it didn't perform well. But Notre Dame's missing their best cornerback, Ben Morrison. And IU does like to push it down the field. They do like to throw the ball a lot and throw the ball deep. So if there is a weakness to exploit, they have to take it at that Notre Dame secondary. And that's really, I think, the only way that they're going to be able to win. Now, weather permitting, it's going to be cold. I don't know if there's like snow in the forecast or anything like that, which obviously could inhibit, throwing the ball and it becomes more of a run game. But to me, I think that's the only way IU can win is if their passing offense is working. So, and if that does seem to happen, Notre Dame needs to match that. And to me, Notre Dame's offense isn't great. Quarterback Riley Leonard, to me, I know statistic wise he's not like a super run heavy quarterback, but he does run a lot. And I wouldn't say he's just like an unbelievable, passer of the football by any means. But if IU is humming on offense, Notre Dame needs to be able to match that, or at least hope their defense is, really playing well. So, to me, the only way the Hoosiers can succeed is through the air. But in the end, I think Notre Dame, I don't want to say wins this easily, but, I think they cover. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, Indiana's kind of Cinderella run kind of comes to an end.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you just said. I think Notre Dame wins this from a viewing perspective comfortably. I think the scoreboard is going to show a tighter game, but I think the atmosphere in South Bend is going to be buzzing. I think because it's the first playoff game in South Bend. I mean, that's never happened anywhere, but in South Bend to launch this off, I think you're going to get a lot of alumni, a lot of people really excited. It's going to be a very, very dominated Notre Dame crowd. I think it's going to make it tough for Indiana. Probably the most hostile environment they're going to witness all year. Probably more than the Ohio State game. Notre Dame's also pretty experienced. They didn't have the toughest schedule this year, but they still went 4-0 against the top 25. Indiana, obviously, their only matchup against a top 25 opponent this year was Ohio State, where they didn't look very good at all. So I kind of back in what you say. It's going to be chilly, but I think both these teams are going to be pretty ready for it, both being pretty cold weather teams. I just think Notre Dame is going to be a little bit more experienced, a little bit more physical, and I can see this being like a 24-10-ish game. Notre Dame wins pretty handedly. Indiana on the scoreboard will hang around, but if you're watching it, you're going to be like, Indiana's going to need some luck to pull it out. Going on to Sunday's games, and this is where things get a little bit interesting. We're going to go number 11.
Saturday.
What? Sorry?
Saturday, not Sunday.
Oh, sorry, Saturday. My bad. Jeez. Completely skipping. Saturday. 11 seed SMU going to College Station, Penn State, 6. This game starts at, I think it's 10 o'clock Pacific time, so early, 1 o'clock out east, but 27 degrees, and there may be snow in the forecast. So that does lean towards Penn State. It's going to be chilly, potentially going to be wet. What do you got in this one?
So I'm actually picking the upset here. I have just not been a big Penn State fan. The stat I mentioned last week with head coach James Franklin just not being able to win against anyone in basically the top 25. If it's Michigan or Ohio State, he basically loses. If it's a top 10 or top 5 opponent, he basically loses. SMU is a top 12 team, obviously, since they're in the playoff. They're from Dallas. They don't know what this kind of weather's like, which is going to hinder them, I think. But I just don't think that Penn State offense, I know they played so well against Oregon, and their tight end is insanely good. I don't know. There's just something about this Penn State team I just don't like. Now, bear with me here. My key to this game is the Penn State pass rush. They're the number 7 pass rush grade per Pro Football Focus, and they're led by defensive end Abdul Carter. He's had 10 sacks all season. Now, I say this because they've had a really good defense, and that's what I think has led them to this playoff appearance. Abdul Carter, he was the Big Ten Player of the Year. They have the guys on the defensive end. Now, SMU has Kevin Jennings at quarterback, and I think he really proved himself in that second half against Clemson in the almost comeback, we'll say. And to me, he's going to be the key, not just with the ball in his hands, but with his legs. I think him and the running back for SMU need to establish the run, especially if this game is going to be, kind of grimy and dirty, if it's wet and snowy and icy. SMU really needs to establish the run. And the key is going to be their offensive line, just because they're going up against probably the best defensive line they've ever seen. So if they can establish the run, that's going to be really their only shot at winning. I'm picking the upset, so I'm going with SMU. What about you?
So I'm going to take Penn State, just come out straight and say it. I think the home advantage, I think, is really going to help in this first round. I think this is also going to be a very hostile environment, especially it is cold, it is wet and rainy. I think that's definitely going to play to Penn State's advantage. I really like how they played against Oregon a couple weeks back. And if they play like that on the offensive side of the ball, I don't know how SMU is going to shut down these tight ends, these wide receivers. Oregon had a hard time matching up with them. I think SMU is really going to struggle slowing down Penn State. The other thing, too, SMU, the best 2 opponents they played this year, Clemson, which they just lost to, and then earlier in the year they lost to BYU. They really struggled to move the ball against BYU, only picking up 15 points. This is probably going to be one of the best defenses, as you addressed. The D line for Penn State, very, very good. Carter's going to be, definitely a top 10 draft pick here in the NFL the draft coming up. I think it's going to be just too much to overcome. But I will say, there is that little bit of a fear, with Franklin, big games, he does seem to flounder. And if SMU's biggest goal for this one should be if they can get up 10 a score too quick, it could deflate the crowd, and there's going to be whispers already of, oh my God, here we go again. So SMU just can't fall behind early. If they give up, 14 easy points in the first quarter, it could get rough really quick, but they got to kind of they got to deflate the crowd and kind of give that atmosphere of, oh, here we go again. So it's the only way I think SMU really has a chance. But I'll take Penn State. Going on to the 5-12 matchup, the 12 seed Clemson won by winning the ACC championship. Going down to Austin, Texas to take on number 5. This game, lovely 66 degrees at kickoff. Gotta love these southern states. I think I know where you're going on this one, but I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, I'm taking Texas. I think they win this game handedly. Cade Klubnik, quarterback for Clemson, he is an Austin native. Unfortunately, in the 2 games prior to this against SEC competition, no touchdowns and 2 picks. And those opponents were South Carolina and Georgia. So that Clemson offense scored 17 total points in those 2 games. This is going to be their 3rd game against an SEC opponent, with arguably Texas being one of the better teams. Obviously, Georgia beat them and secured the 2 seed. I still think Texas might be the best SEC team in this playoff. Another thing to keep in mind is that Texas also has a very good defense and a very good defensive line. Clemson's O-line is super shaky. So there's just a lot of factors to me that are in favor of Texas. Now, the only thing I think Clemson has going for them is I'm curious to see how banged up Quinn Ewers is. I was a little interested to see how much Arch Manning was going to be used in that championship game, and he really wasn't used much. So I want to know if he's going to be used a little more in this game, because he's proven that he can play. And there's rumblings of Quinn Ewers actually transferring if he doesn't go to the NFL draft, which is interesting. I don't know how true that is. I guess we'll kind of see how that plays out. But the biggest thing, like I mentioned, I just want to know how banged up Quinn Ewers really is, because, like I said, Arch Manning's really good. He still just doesn't have the experience Quinn Ewers does. So to me, that would be a huge turn of events, is if he has to come in and be the starter and Quinn Ewers just can't play. That would be kind of Clemson's only real advantage, or maybe something they can at least take back to the sideline and be like, all right, we got the backup in. I know it's a big-time backup in Arch Manning, but, to me, I don't think that Clemson really has much of a shot. So I like Texas to handedly win this game.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I mean, it's a 12-point line in Texas's favor. I don't have a whole lot to add to this one. The only thing that concerns me about Texas, it just didn't look, just didn't look great in that SEC championship game. There's been moments throughout the season where Texas kind of just goes into lulls. And as long as they don't come in like super flat, I think they can win this one. I don't even think they have to put an A effort out there. I think if they throw out a good B effort and they find a way to score 21 points, I think that's all it's going to take. I don't think Clemson's going to score too much on this Texas defense, which I think is very, very good. It's just this Texas offense, which we've seen at times, just kind of just doesn't really click, and they can't move the ball. I think this will help being at home, having the crowd behind them. Um, I'm not taking Clemson. I'm taking Texas, but they just need to come out with a little bit of fire. So, almost to set kind of a message to the rest of the tournament that, hey, we're still here, even though we're the 5 seed. Send a message to the rest of yeah, we're still good. They seem to be kind of flying a little bit under the radar, just a little bit. 8-9 matchup is fantastic. 9 seed Tennessee going to Ohio State. I believe if I read this right, snow is in the forecast for this one, or it's going to be very chilly. 28 degrees at kickoff, and I think there may be some flurries, but nothing heavy. But chilly one at kickoff. I think both these teams are pretty used to the cold, though. Actually, it's going to snow the night before. That's what it is. But chilly at kickoff. Um, Ohio State favored by 8, 7.5 at this point. 7. Favorite by 7, which I think is a lot, but I'll give it to you.
They're probably getting the remnants of that Notre Dame Indiana forecast if it's
Yeah.
heading east. I like Ohio State in this game. I think they're the most talented team in this tournament entirely. Whether they put it all together, obviously that's to be seen. We saw what happened in the Michigan game. Uh, to me, both these teams have a super stingy run defense and just defense in general. So I kind of feel like this game's going to be really low scoring, especially if the weather's not cooperating. Ohio State, I think, has the more up-tempo offense, so if they do need to get a couple plays here and there, relying on guys like Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Abuduka, you know, pretty good receivers to have in your back pocket if the run game's not working. I just feel like the Tennessee defense is pretty stingy. So, yeah, like I said, I don't think this is going to be that great of a game from an offensive standpoint. One other thing to note is Ohio State's offensive line is kind of in shambles with injuries too, so that also doesn't help with the run game. So if I keep saying it, you know, this also could be a kind of grimy game if the weather doesn't cooperate. So it'll be interesting to see. What defensive schemes Tennessee throws at Ohio State, but I still like Ohio State to pull this one out, just in kind of a gross, one of those like 16-13 or 16-10 or I don't know, something real low scoring and just kind of a grinded out type of game. I know we talked previously, and I know who you have picked to win this game, so I'll kick it back over to you with the other side of the ball.
Yeah, I like Tennessee in this one. I'm going to talk a little bit I'm going to talk a little bit about Ohio State really fast. This reminds me a lot of a Kentucky basketball team. A lot of talent, a lot of hype. It's a team that if it gets going, nobody wants to face them. But at the exact same time, can very easily see this team getting bounced in the first round. So it feels very much like Kentucky basketball, especially where they're at in the bracket. Um, I think if Tennessee comes out and scores quick and takes the crowd out of this thing, the Ohio State crowd's going to just bail on this team, just boo them beyond all belief based off of what happened against Michigan a few weeks ago. This Ohio State team has looked, when they're great, they're great. When they're awful, they're awful. And their fans know it. But I would say these are two teams that are just very hard to like. You don't know what you're going to get week to week. It seems like Tennessee. There's been weeks where they look like they're the best team in the country. Same with Ohio State. There's been weeks where Michigan for Ohio State. It was Arkansas earlier in the year against Tennessee, where you're looking at these teams and you're like, oh my God, this is not a top 15 team. But both offenses can get going. Both defenses can fly around the ball. I think Tennessee's going to take them out of the game. I think everything's going to get flustered for Ohio State. I do agree. I think it's going to be ugly, and I think it's going to be ugly on one side. I think it's going to be ugly on the Ohio State side. I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee threw up 35 points. And turns into like a 35-14 game where Ohio State just gets embarrassed. That's kind of how I feel. At the exact same breath, Ohio State can come out there and look like gangbusters and look like the best team in the country, and I wouldn't be surprised. Granted, I think the other is going to happen. I say Tennessee.
Okay, I got a question for you. If Ohio State comes out and gets embarrassed and loses first round, especially not being in the title game and then coming off the loss to Michigan, I know the rumors are out there. I know in Ohio State Twitter and message boards, it's out there. Does Ryan Day have a job if Ohio State loses their first round game?
I don't know. He might get fired, but the question is who replaces him? I mean, that just proves then it's like the hardest job to keep in America. I mean, that what he's done everything right. I mean, he just can't beat Michigan. He's not been great in these big games. Um, it's something crazy. It's the last 5 years eh, during the regular season. I think it's like 41-1, and then he's 0-4 against Michigan, and the one loss was to Oregon this year. Something like that. I mean, it's. I don't think he does. I think he immediately gets put on the hot seat. Um, but the question is who would they go get? That's the biggest question. Who's the biggest name out there? You'd have to have someone basically ready to go, and like basically you've already talked to someone that's willing to take the job. I just don't know who would take the job. I mean, Urban Meyer's already straight out come out and said, no, not doing it. Um, I don't know who would take it. So he's done a really good job. It's just this is a I don't know. I don't know. I would say no. I would say no. He doesn't get fired. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really have an answer to it, honestly. I mean, I agree with you. He obviously the for a program like Ohio State, they want national championships and they want to beat Michigan. He's not bringing them national championships or bowl wins. I don't think he's really winning.
I
I'd have
think
to
it'd
look
be
up.
great. Yeah.
Um, but they're not those big games. When I say big games, like prior to the college football championship, like the New Year's Six or whatever they used to call it. I'd be curious to see how he did recently. I don't remember, but obviously he can't beat Michigan,
Yeah.
and those are clearly big things to the Ohio State fan base. I don't think he should be fired. Whether he does or not, I don't know. I mean, if he gets embarrassed in this first round,
There's
people are
gonna,
going to be going for his head.
yeah, there'll be rumblings. Yeah. Well, we shall see. It's going to be a fun weekend, and then yeah, we'll be back actually tomorrow talking NFL as that season is. We only got 3 weeks left in the NFL season too. So football wrapping up as we come into these cold months. James, thank you so much for being here, and we will be right back at it tomorrow with some lovely NFL Week 16 action. Have a fun time watching college football this weekend, guys. Till tomorrow.